Good morning, and you're welcome again to Searching the Heart. Um, Today, I will be doing of course, as my usual style, to do an episode on the current events. Okay, now I was thinking about doing one solely on the visit to the moon by US astronauts. But of course, in my own style, the things that bother me are totally different and range within the confines of theology and human development. Okay, and uh, of course, every living human being uh, would be concerned about the nature of human beings and their lives on earth. Okay, and of course, everything we do, any small thing we do, any wake up in the morning, whatever our routines, such things, mean something to the lives of every human being here on earth, especially our own. And of course, these are the things that we, pastors, theologians, are concerned about. And in the complex intertwinement of the things that go on in this little planet called Earth, the big blue marble, as it were. Of course, we got to see another shot after quite a long time from human beings, not from machines this time, of the big blue marble. This was the narrative in the 80s. I mean, it was so wonderful, a popular thing. Every child grew up hearing about the big blue marble because humans had gone out into space and had photographed the real nature of the world that we live in. While people are still debating, for whatever reason, they might be debating whether this is true, whether the earth is round, spherical, or flat. People will always do that. That is the nature of human beings, but it was confirmed way back in between 1957 and 1969 that the earth is indeed round, spherical, okay? So, this is also very important in the everyday lives of every human being on earth because it impinges on the question, what is the meaning of life? Okay? The meaning of life. You can ask many other questions within this very, very compound topic, the meaning of life. Okay? So, this is intrinsically what it is. And even if you don't want to ask such questions, you are answering the same question. Okay, what is the meaning of life? For people who feel like, hundreds of years ago, somebody called Epicurus, discovered his own meaning of life. And for him, you need to just disobey what Solomon had already discovered, because Solomon did exactly what Epicurus did, and his own conclusion was that life is meaningless without God. Okay, but for Epicurus, for his own conclusion was, why not explore that meaninglessness? And that is for him what meaning was all about. So this is just the polar opposites of two people seeing the same thing and yet reaching different conclusions. Okay, so Solomon on one hand, probably about 1,000 years before Epicurus, discovering the same thing but reaching a different conclusion, and Epicurus later on. Okay, maybe about 600 to 1,000 years, between them. So this is just what it is. And every day we deal with these issues. When you hear that there's gun violence somewhere, there's a bomb exploding somewhere, because people are disagreeing on these things, okay? And so we have to keep on talking about them. Maybe some things will change, and doing something about it, okay? Human beings have continuously done something about it, and this is what has led them to go out there to space, okay? And to try to conquer space. Now, while in our generation also this might be a remarkable achievement, it is actually just the first step. Just as Neil Armstrong discovered 1969 when he made that first step, touchdown on the moon, and put his leg down, and he said, this is one small step for humanity, okay? It's just a small step. They have done literally nothing, and that is why some of us space enthusiasts are kind of on the edge of our seats, okay? We know how difficult it is, and yet we are saying we need to do more. And the reason, because we know that the technology exists, and the minds exist that are able to do this. So within this video today, I will be trying to explore the pros and the cons, and looking at some of the issues that come out very pungent in this very visit around the moon. Okay, so first of all, let's start. How did these nations get to this point? Okay, we're talking about just a handful of nations within the greater humanity. Okay, United States, Russia first. Okay, China have just been able to cross that line maybe just about a decade ago, you know, and Japan too doing okay. One or two other nations launching satellites. Even Nigeria has launched a satellite, of course paid for a private company to launch a satellite out there for them, because the need has arisen. Of course, security needs, climate needs, communication needs, okay? The most valuable applications for the space industry are satellites, okay? TV technology. When satellites are launched and they are put in orbit, they are able to relay signals from one part of the earth to the other. And since this discovery, I mean, it has been something that everybody wants to get into. Of course, once we were able to talk to one another on phone lines, we were able to watch television, you know, all the military applications were there, we decided to relax, of course. And this is what happened. 50 years, it's been 50 years since any such human exploration has taken place, okay, beyond the present LEO, low Earth orbit functions of the ISS, okay. So human exploration has just recently ventured beyond this and is going back towards the moon again. And so these applications seem to satisfy us, okay. Once we get what we want, a little relaxation. We have developed this technology to the point that we now use our cell phones, okay. And cell phones, especially the GSM, may not even, you know, require so much of space technology or exploration. The signals are relayed from one point of the earth to the other, you know, because we already understand the technology. So it's not really a priority, okay. But before these nations, as I was saying, before these nations got to where they wanted to get to, they were able to manage little things, okay, small things, like their security, okay. Remember, the first the adventure into the moon occurred after the Second World War. The issue of security must have been solved for these nations. Russia, United States. Okay, yes, they were able to solve, little issues as to the social governance of their people. Okay, simple things like the Russians had gone through numerous revolutions. Okay, and they had established a system in place through Lenin and now Stalin. At that point, Stalin, that okay, we want to be ruled this way. The Americans had established democracy. Okay, this is what they wanted, and the system was working. The judiciary was working. The police were working. Okay, we've talked about the military already. No infrastructure, ability to feed their people, ability, to keep a government running years and years without disruption. Okay, so this is what was happening in those countries, and that is why these countries stood head over shoulders, above any other country, and were able to begin this process, begin to explore this sector that was literally, a very new sector, had never been touched before. Okay, it is the oldest sector on planet Earth, because human beings have delved into astrology and astronomy for thousands of years, but it is at this point about 4,000, 5,000 years after human civilization has started that the first man was able to get into orbit, and the first man subsequently landed on the moon. Okay, so this is what happened. They had been able to solve these little problems: nationhood, security, infrastructure, and established a stable human civilization. Okay, so these are the things that when you look at it from the African point of view, from the Nigerian point of view, you would want to say, why is Nigeria not getting into the space industry that much? And even if it does it call for any excitement? I remember when the first satellites were being launched out of Nigeria, of course paid for by Nigerian government to an independent contractor to be launched to space. Everybody was excited. Wow, Nigeria is doing something new. And the reason was because at that time, okay, Nigeria was a bit stable. Okay, security-wise, was a bit stable. And the economy was better. And it was a time when Nigerians were basking in democracy, and everybody was excited. But right now, people will not be too excited because of these things I've mentioned. Stability, first of all. Security, very important, which will be affirmed by the judiciary. Every Nigerian can go out there and be sure that if something goes wrong, I can go to a court and get justice. Okay, we've been complaining about this for decades. It's still not yet a reality. Instead, the cost of justice is getting higher and higher by the day. Okay, so this is a problem. Okay, simple infrastructure like water, electricity. These are problems. You can't even use the internet and not expect that a problem will arise. Just the other day, in where I live, we kind of pay the highest in the whole country. They call it the band A for electricity. And the normal amount I would normally pay, I have to augment with a little solar electricity, okay? Just so that I won't be able to pay that much because I can't afford it, okay? So I was just paying for it, and I discovered suddenly they had doubled without. So literally you begin to ask the question, is there a government in Nigeria? Okay? Sometimes you want to send money online, the money doesn't go. You have to keep on calling and calling and calling to get a refund. So little things like that don't work. So why would you be excited about space? Or anybody want to talk about space? So these are the things, okay? So we must establish that these things must be established. Then you talk about space. Because this impinges on the issue of the meaning of life. Okay? Everything I've talked about, from the infrastructure to, the provision of daily needs. This impinges on the meaning of life. And this is the real thing. if we are going to space, it's about the meaning of life. That is the thing. And we must be able to begin from the first step before we get to where America, has gone right now, okay? And where other countries like China and Russia, have been. So this is what we need to understand, okay? So we will talk about the problem. We'll continue to talk about this, okay? Why are the third world countries or the developing countries really going to struggle at this point? Because of the concept, okay, of development itself. That, there's so much of a gap. You see it very clearly because, to catch up, most of our leaders, they just abandon research and manufacturing, and they just believe, look, let's just buy these things from the Western nations, okay, from military equipment to satellite technology to artificial intelligence, to simple vehicles, okay. We want to be able to do things easily and quickly, as fast as they would do it, because we are under pressure, okay. Competition from other nations all around the world, and being afraid of being bullied. Of course, like we've mentioned, everybody's talking about the Iran issue, everybody's talking about the Ukraine issue, okay. The only reasons the Ukrainians are able to survive till now is because they are practically Russians, okay. Their history is that they are Russians, and whatever stride in technology that Russians have been able to achieve, they too must know one or two things about it, okay. And it's even said that the Ukrainians are one of the most intelligent and brilliant people in Russia, when it was still the Soviet Union. So that is why they are surviving. Apart from the support, of course, the overwhelming support they had gotten from the United States and from the Europeans. So this is what it is. So there is that pressure. We must, catch up. We must stay up to date. And this is what is affecting us as African countries, okay? I will continue by talking about what approach we should use, okay? What are the different approaches, and where should we really concentrate? I'll go straight to the point, okay? These things have been discussed over and over and over again over the decades. But the problem that some of us keep on talking about is that somehow, I don't know where the problem is actually coming from. Is it that the availability of these resources already developed by the Western countries, makes us lazy as a people? Or is it that it's just something about us? In answering this question, I want to bring China into the picture and bring India into the picture. Okay, these are the two rising powers in Asia. Okay, now you can arguably say Nigeria and South Africa, Egypt are the rising powers in Africa, maybe Kenya. Okay, now, but right now there is a huge gap, okay, between Asia and Nigeria and Africa, because of what happened in the 90s, okay, late 80s into the 90s, something happened. The Asian tiger roared, okay, the Asian tiger roared. China was a poor country, very large, very huge population, but it was a poor country. But something happened in Asia. The Asian countries began to do things differently from what Africa was doing, okay. They began to invest in their own country, okay. It doesn't matter whether they were practicing communism or more liberal economy like what India was practicing, it doesn't matter. But these Asian countries began to invest inward instead of outward. They were suffering almost the same thing we suffered, like about immigration, tyranny, poverty, but something was different. Okay, they decided to invest in their own country, no matter what. And how did they do this? Self-reliance. Okay, it was the same program that somebody like Ibrahim Babangida was pursuing, the SAP program, Structural Adjustment Program. Okay, manufacture in the country, produce in the country. Okay, reduce your expenditure in buying things from outside. But somebody applied his own while somebody did not. Okay, the Asians were more vigorous, were more committed. And what you have today is an economy in China that is almost competing with the American economy. Okay, in fact, it is said that they got the Americans to stop producing and begin to patronize them. Okay, so this is what happened. India, okay, up till about the early 2000s, India was still having very high rates of poverty. Okay, of course, right now they have the highest population in the world. But India also went inward. Okay, I mean, manufacturing. They got the poor people into small-scale enterprises. You would of course complain about climate. You complain about the standard of living, but to their credit, it was working. Their automobile industry grew. It grew. It flourished. Not because like China they were producing high-tech cars. No, they were producing the kind of cars they could drive. That was the peculiar thing about India. Okay, they produced the kind of cars they would drive. I think the popular company was Tata. Okay, yes, that was Tata. Tata, went global for just producing the Lada. There was this very simple car called the Lada. It was produced there in India, very simply, very cheaply, with cheap materials, and they moved their economy, not just in the automobile industry, in different industries, everywhere. They were self-reliant, and this is what built the Indian economy. Okay, while here in Nigeria, that was the motive, that was the program, the SAP program, but it did not work. Okay, it did not work. So this is the problem that we see. This is the difference that we see. Okay, and what we see here in Nigeria today is that when China and India are producing drones, producing airplanes, even producing cars, and exporting, Nigeria is still buying from outside. There are a few automobile assembling companies, I'll call them, like the Innoson, like Nord, in Nigeria, but the cost of those cars are just too much. Okay, they are just too much. They are not. It's not like the Tata. The Tata could be afforded by the simple taxi driver. But in Nigeria, can a taxi driver today afford Nord or one of Innoson's cars? This is the problem. We have to import the Keke Napep from India. Okay, so this is the issue at stake. Okay, so this is, I just want to build on this because all these things impinge on the meaning of life. Okay, and space is just that peak that we have gotten to. Like I've said, we have not really even scratched the surface of space yet. Okay, we've not gone to Mars. We're still struggling after close to 70 years. Okay, 60 something years to just after being to the moon, we're struggling to just go back. Yes, it's still the surface, but it is still very far-fetched out there for people here in Nigeria, for instance. Okay, so we have to talk about these little things. Okay, and so just drawing a comparison between the Asian tiger and the African lion, you might want to say, why is the lion still sleeping? Okay, why is the lion still sleeping? This is the problem. The Asian tiger is roaring, but the lion is sleeping. Why I say it is sleeping, because we're still depending on drones from overseas, military equipment from overseas, planes from overseas, We can't even have simple planes that just, ferry from here to Lagos, manufactured in Nigeria. We're struggling to manufacture cars. So this is the problem. We're struggling to bring in AI, while a simple phone transaction does not work. Sending money from here to there. You recharge electricity today, charge it to 1 to 3 months. Once the provider gets used to you doing that, the next time the whole thing shuts down. Okay, so this is the problem. Ease of doing business, very poor, and this is what is also contributing, I dare say, to the security problems. Okay, so we must look at that. Okay, so in the next one, we'll be looking at the issues still around the space race when it comes to security and the arms race. Okay, so we've talked about these things. I thought I should just draw the background, okay, to show you that space is not just on its own. It's not just some hobby. It's my hobby, but it's just the pinnacle of development itself. Okay, arguably, man has created all this development just to get to space. When you look at it historically, it's just that, of course, as our nature is, we've gotten to a place where we're comfortable, so our space has taken the back seat. Okay, so that is just the thing, but actually we probably did all this just to get to space, okay, to discover the meaning of life. Okay, so it is still ongoing. Okay, so now we want to look at why is space so important. We've talked about the foundational issues first. Provision of basic amenities for human beings. Okay, but why is space important? We will look at this in this segment. Okay, now we have to also understand the relationship between the arms race and space exploration. Okay, and we will discover this very, very clear history. Okay, it was after the Second World War that space became a thing. Okay, and I keep on wondering. Now, I'm not an expert in the details of the historical details, but one thing I see very pungently is the prophecy I've always said in Isaiah chapter 2 verse 4. And this prophecy says, "And he will judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore." Now, this is very, very utopian situation. Okay, saying, look, by the time the kingdom of God comes, God will rule the nations, and He will make them to stop fighting one another, so that whatever weapon of war they have, they will now turn that weapon of war to an agricultural implement. Okay, and they will no longer, make war anymore, because God will solve the disputes between them. Okay, never has this occurred in history before. Never. Okay, it has never occurred in history before until after the Second World War. We must understand this. Okay, after the Second World War, the Russians turned a used or an unused weapon canister, emptied it and turned it into, put something else in it and turned it into a satellite. That was Sputnik, 1957 through to 1959. Okay, that was Sputnik, and they turned it into a satellite, a radio transmitter. Okay, because of course they had reached an agreement with all the nations of the world, more than 100 of them, 120 something at that time, that look, we will try not to fight one another again, because we've seen the devastation of the Second World War. Thousands dead, probably millions, and the atomic bomb was first used. And the atomic bomb created such a scare. These weapons are going to destroy us as a civilization, okay, as a people. And so this began, and of course we can see that the name, the space race itself, was actually out of competition between the United States and America and Russia. It wasn't the ideal situation that we see, of course, here in the Bible, but one thing was fulfilled, and that a weapon was turned into, something else. And what do you use the satellite to do? To monitor the earth, and it can be used for agricultural purposes, to make to watch climate, to improve our agricultural yield, not only just for communication. Okay, so this is what happened. Yes, and it ignited the space race. Another very important stride, which I was reminded by Destin of Smarter Every Day, is the Plowshare Project. Okay, and that was wonderful understanding that, as we have observed, Christians have been looking into this. Okay, and they quoted directly from this very scripture and established that project. Okay, using nuclear energy instead of using it for destructive purposes, like was done in Japan. They started finding how to turn this nuclear energy to power, usable power, and they succeeded. Okay, right now, nuclear energy is one of the most efficient, forms of energy, and might even go back to contribute to helping the space race. Okay, so this is what happened within those years of peace. Okay, although there was a Cold War, but the first part of the prophecy was fulfilled, turning, weapons of war into tools for development. Okay, and this was the simple way it was described there in Isaiah chapter 2, down in verse 4. Okay, so one prophecy came to pass. Okay, and this now comes to open our eyes to the very nature of understanding the meaning of life itself. Okay, the Bible, of course, the Bible claims to want to help us to discover the meaning of life. People like Solomon, talking about the meaning of life in Ecclesiastes 11 and 12, open our eyes to these things. And the Bible is all about that. And so philosophers like Socrates, like Plato, like Aristotle, Anaximander, I have told us that Anaximander lived almost at the same time with the prophet Ezekiel. Okay, these people were trying to explain the nature of things, the meaning of life. And this is what we need to understand. So we see the first prophecy coming to pass of peace on earth, of war negated and prosperity engaged, okay, through Sputnik, and later on followed by the landing of the moon, and then the harnessing of nuclear energy into power, okay, usable power. These are wonderful developments, and very importantly that the Americans actually did it consciously, they did it deliberately, even quoting from the scripture. Okay, the Plowshare Project. Okay, thank you, Destin, for that. That gave me a lot of information. Okay, that what I suspected, that it was a conscious effort, and it was that what that happened. Okay, so this is very important. Okay, so we will now step and talk about and still try to look at this. How beneficial is space exploration? So how beneficial is space exploration? I tell you, since human beings began to explore space, after the invention of the radio, invention of TV, of course, space was used to expand the possibilities of the use of TV and radio, making communication far more efficient, and so on. And so this is a clear benefit, of course. And this is used to now really map the Earth properly and be able to detect weather phenomenon, okay, out there in space. And of course, very useful for the agricultural sector, very useful for security. And it is true that yes, some of these countries actually did some of these things for the sake of security, okay, managing security, being able to spy on others, protect themselves. But later on, of course, found the other uses, in agriculture, in disaster prevention, and all, so many other communication. Okay, communication is very efficient today because there are satellites in space that really, yes, like you have said, space has been used literally. In fact, well, like we learned from historical data that a lot of the technology we use in our smartphones, and most of the technology that is making waves and changing the economy, was actually developed because of the space race. And this is one of the major benefits of going to space. Like I started saying, okay, it's not just about some tourist adventure. Okay, educated people are saying that it's just about tourism. No, okay, it was a race. The United States and Russia were fighting to get to the moon, mainly for security purposes. But at the end of the day, the technology used to develop some of that technology is now being applied to better the economy here on Earth. Okay, this is just the simple fact of the matter, and of course, this has metamorphosized into just purely the desire to secure themselves. To people are finding that is why it is shifting from the government to the private sector, because they've discovered that now there are applications that are very useful here on Earth, and of course people like Elon Musk have made tons of money from it, even though he started just doing it without any profit, but he saw the potential and of course has been able to make a lot of money from it. So it's very useful here on Earth because it creates some of the technology that now have applications for us here on Earth. Okay, so this is very important. Okay, so we will now delve into the highlights of the current Artemis 2 mission. Okay, round or over the moon, as it were. Okay, like I noted, is it a joke? Is it not a joke? I don't know, but somebody kind of planned it to kind of coincide with Passover. Passover is the feast when the Israelites, the angel of death, passed over the Israeli homes and instead attacked the Egyptians, and that led to the liberation of the Israelites. Okay, so somebody actually deliberately timed it to be that, and it was kind of very interesting, and I said, why not? Okay, if they go over the moon on Passover, they might, of course, land on it on trumpets. Remember the prophecy in Revelations 21, okay? The new heaven and new earth, okay? Coming down to earth. Okay, they are going to probably replicate that on the moon. Okay, we hoped it was going to be Mars, but they are going to do it on the moon, okay? On trumpets, probably, I hope. Well, hopefully the launch window will open up at that time. So maybe atonement, they will start preparing to build a base on the moon, and tabernacles, it will be complete. So this is just the thing, and that is how we have seen the Bible bring a prophetic touch into this very concept. And it kind of helps us, those of us people of faith, to kind of rethink and say, look, maybe we've not been wrong all this time. Okay, in a time when the world is going atheistic, is going relativistic, our faith is being grounded, being made firmer on with these prophecies. Like I've talked about the prophecy also in Ezekiel that has come to pass. Okay, And some, like the one in Ezekiel, strangely enough, again like the Plowshare project, seems to be deliberate. Somebody knew that the Carina Nebula is somewhere there and deliberately, tried to find it. So this is the problem, we have people who have knowledge and who have a lot of understanding, and where there is no such knowledge and understanding, of course, like I said from the beginning, you see what is happening. So this is just the thing, and that is why America, by God's providence, the United States, is taking the lead, in this time and this age. Okay, so this is the issue at stake. So let's look a bit on the technology involved here. Okay, some of us will wonder, is it true, is it fake? Like there are deniers out there that are saying the earth is not, these are all made of their stage. Okay, so how do you explain the things that you see? We'll be looking at that after this.
Sometimes we feel lost as we live in this world. He seems so far away. He seems so far away, but he's not so far away. And we keep struggling, we're chasing after idols, 'cause he seems so far away. And though he seems so far away, he is not so far away. Though he seems so far away, he is not so far away. Though he seems so far away, he is not so far away. Though he seems so far away, he is not so far away. Though he seems so far away, so far away. Yet so near, yet so near, so close, yet so near, so close. He wants to hold you.
Plain things that you see. Okay, when you look at the video, it's a live feed. Okay, there are so many questions. Why does these things behave like this? Weightlessness, you have to be able to explain weightlessness. You have to be able to explain the kind of motionlessness that you see, not within the cabin itself, the crew cabin itself, but when the camera is looking from outside. It doesn't look like here when you're in a car down on earth, you see, when the car is moving, you see trees kind of passing. And why don't you see stars passing out there in space? So there's a form of kind of motionlessness. So how do you explain that? How do you explain weightlessness? So we'll look briefly into all these things. Okay, there are many other things like the you saw the pictures of the eclipse of the earth at this time. Okay, the earth was looking as the moon would look. It's probably still looking that same way right now. Okay, I don't know what time is. I think by the time I was watching the live feed, the earth still was kind of just a crescent kind of earth. Okay, so there are many things to explore. Okay, but the two I want to touch on is weightlessness and motionlessness, perceived motionlessness. Okay, outside the cabin. Okay, it's very difficult to see anything move. Now, in that area, okay, of motionlessness, it is about the vastness of space. Okay, the vastness of space does not allow you to see everything. Here on earth, you can look up and you see a lot of stars. In fact, billions, you can't count them. Now, something happened when they launched a telescope out into space, and that was the Hubble telescope. So what they saw, and this I heard actually from Rick Joyner and so many others, okay, when they focused, there was a problem with the lens, so they had to go up there and fix it. And so they removed the lens and put another one. So they focused on a star, what they thought was a star. And when they focused on the star, what they saw instead was a galaxy. Okay, so it was shocking that here on Earth we look and we see so many stars. We don't know which ones are planets, which ones are suns of their solar systems, which ones are just comets. Where we're able to probably identify the comets because they are moving, the shooting star, what we call shooting stars. Okay, but we can't identify anything else. But the Hubble was able to identify a galaxy, what was thought to be a star. Okay, so this is so fascinating. Okay, because the space is so vast. Space is so vast. Okay, so with that small camera angle, you will be unable to actually see everything, and that gives a sense of motionlessness. Okay, as if the thing is just standing on one place. Okay, because of the vastness of space. It's so vast. And of course it's dark, except you're facing the sun, because the whole place is dark, so you can't see much. Okay, and within that highlight, I want to bring in a very important discovery here. Okay, I don't know whether, I wasn't watching the feed throughout, so I don't know whether the commentators spoke about it, but if you look very closely, the picture is coming up right now. Okay, you will see Jupiter right there in the shadows. Okay, it is vague. I looked at it first, I said, what is this? What planet is this? Okay, it was a kind of spherical figure in the background. Okay, and I was wondering, what is this? What is this? What is this? I had never seen this before, and it's so enlightening to understand that immediately you are in space, you would see the planet so vividly. A commentator was talking about, one of the NASA commentators was talking about Saturn. Okay, but I thought what I saw, and the picture is up, is Jupiter. Okay, you could see the lines, those lines of Jupiter, very clearly, and it's so massive right there, and so it's so beautiful. They were also talking about seeing Mars. Okay, and I know from down here I was able to locate Mars. After really plotting the thing, I was able to locate Mars at a point. And of course, even from down here, you can locate Uranus and all those others. Okay, so it was wonderful. For those of you who are, deniers, moon landing deniers, flat earthers, you need to watch this video and search out the explanations. If you're not listening to me right now, okay, search out the explanations. You see Jupiter very clearly, and the explanation for motionlessness is because of that vast. So that was that about the very beautiful sight there of Jupiter. Okay, and that was maybe one of the most exciting, though it was dark, it was blurred, exciting parts of that from down here I was able to see Jupiter, and it gave me the idea of what would happen if I was an astronaut and I was up there. It's such a wonderful experience. Okay, so for those of you who are flat earthers, who are moon landing deniers, that is one thing to look at. Okay, and I've tried to explain motionlessness because of the vastness of space. Okay, the solar system that we live in is so small compared to the vastness, and when you are out there you can appreciate that even more. Okay, and this is very, very important. So now we're going to be talking about weightlessness. Okay, weightlessness is also a very, very interesting concept. Actually, most of you must have heard about gravity. Okay, that gravity is a force that keeps us earthbound. Okay, it's a force. It's kind of what you might call a centripetal, agent. When you keep on turning something around like that at high speeds, the reason why, there is a force that is exerted, and that force is exerted to the center of the point at which you are holding the string. Okay, you are turning it like that. The force is exerted to the center. Okay, that is called a centripetal force. So everybody in the universe, everything that exists in the universe has a force acting on its center. Okay? And the earth has a force that is acting on its center and attracts, and that the force is responsible for attracting, there's a force of attraction rather between the earth and any object around it. That is why the moon revolves around the earth. Okay? You see that tendency to revolve because it is a centripetal force. It's like somebody holding a string and kind of turning it like that. Okay, so there's a centripetal force between the two. Okay, it can be explained in another way, but that is the idea. So the closer you come to the object, the stronger that force becomes, and that is the force of gravity. Once you get to Earth, that is why if you listen to the comments on the NASA website, you hear how that how that lunar injection process takes place. Okay, the slingshot process. Okay, they were first of all captured in the Earth's gravitational field, then they tried to get out of it, and then get caught up in the moon's gravitational field. Okay, and that is what they use to now slingshot themselves round the moon and back towards Earth. Okay, so this is what happens. And if they wanted to go to Mars, they would have still used a similar process. Okay, so there are those forces that are attracting each particle in the universe to another particle. The larger the particle, the stronger the force it exerts, okay, on another one, and that is gravity. Okay, so weightlessness is experienced when you come out of, you go further and further away from a particular object, in this case the Earth. Okay, immediately you are outside the immediate atmosphere of the Earth, you begin to experience weightlessness. Okay, because the force of gravity at that point is less. Okay, especially that you might be getting further and further away from the magnetic field that the Earth produces. Okay, so this is it. Okay, some bodies don't have a very strong magnetic field like the Earth, and that is why they don't have an atmosphere. So weightlessness is like that. And one of the other ways to understand weightlessness, okay, is when you go at very high speeds. Now Scott Manley tried to do this. Okay, tried to explain this in one of his videos. He went on a plane, and the plane was moving in a particular way, and because of that movement at high speeds, they are able to simulate that weightless environment. Okay, so the same principle. Okay, when you go on the International Space Station, some people find it very hard to believe when they see videos about the International Space Station, and the reason is because that station is going round the Earth at a very, very high speed, about 28,000 kilometers per hour. Okay, very high speed. Okay, so at that point, as a human being inside that space station, you are unable to really, the effect of that speed, you are able to really sense it, unable to sense it. Okay, and that creates weightlessness. That's another way of understanding weightlessness. When speed becomes so high so that it overcomes gravity. Okay, that is another explanation. The speed is so high, it overcomes gravity. When you move a car beyond 200 kilometers per hour, yes, you lose, the car may probably start flying and you might get into an accident. Okay, so that is just it. Because at that point, you're supposed to be flying. The speeds attained while flying are very different from the speeds you can attain while engaging friction. Okay, if you've heard of friction before. So these are the science, the basics of science that you learn in secondary school or high school. Talking about force of gravity, about friction, about acceleration, the equations that govern acceleration, equations of motion, and all that. So it is very important. Okay. So Orion itself was moving at about 35,000 to 40,000 kilometers per hour. Okay, and of course at that speed it will be weightless. It has been able to, the rocket was able to overcome the forces of gravity, And because of that overcoming the forces of gravity that pull it down to the earth, it has the people inside. Now the force of gravity loses its power over them. Okay, and so they are floating. So it is a function of speed. Basically, that's another way of understanding it. That is weightlessness. Okay, so that is just to help us to understand what weightlessness is all about, so that you can better believe it. Because some of the reason why some people don't believe it is because we don't understand how it works. Okay, when you throw a stone, you know the stone has velocity and is moving. You know, the force of throwing the stone has been able to overcome somewhat gravity. Okay, and that is why it is flying. Flight gets to a point that the forces at stake no longer have so much power over it, and it becomes weightlessness. It's just simple as that. Okay, I believe you understand it at this point. Okay, so this is very important. We will now round up after this break. So now in rounding up this video, I want to talk about the meaning of life again. It is an exciting topic, and we began this week talking about the meaning of life. Thousands of years ago, or indeed a few hundreds, a man called Irenaeus propounded a theory of recapitulation, coining it from the philosophy of the Greeks that the world was created by an evil God, and so everything physical must be evil. Now, a philosopher called Philo, just within the time Jesus was born, living in Alexandria, Egypt, had said, building on the work of philosophers like Anaximander, Thales, and Socrates, he had said that the force responsible for creating the world was the Logos, okay, the Word, okay, translated the Word of God. And this also, the coming and the revelation of Jesus Christ, who claimed to be the Word of God, was used in John chapter 1 verse 1, establishing the Christian foundation. So Philo talked about the Logos, okay, and John chapter 1 verse 1 explains what that means, that God used his word to create the world, okay, and this for Irenaeus affirmed the theory of recapitulation, believing that yes, God is indeed resisting life, okay, but he capitulated in allowing a little life to be created in this very small place called planet. And in allowing Jesus to come, he was recapitulating, okay, believing that these people called human beings will make something of themselves and make something of creation. And this is the foundation of Christian theology, okay. So the question remains, will we succeed or will we end up destroying ourselves? Will God destroy us? This is the question of the meaning of life. But one thing is sure, and I believe this, that if we are not here, we will be replaced by another civilization. And the principle is still from the Bible. There will always be a witness on the planet Earth, in the universe, to witness of the existence of God. Psalms chapter 19. I am David Dunji Chinke for you today in Searching the Heart. And for those of you who have been subscribing to this channel, this is an opportunity for me to say thank you. You have been a blessing to me and to the work I'm doing. And I believe that you have seized the opportunity to go onto the website and to subscribe to some of the books that we have there listed. You can also continue to do that. There is a new book that is out for you, for your enjoyment. For those of you who want to really understand the foundation of what I'm talking about. I talk about so many topics, but this new book will open your eyes to this reality. It is titled Foundations of Conceptuality. Go there go to the website to buy your copy. Recommend this to your friends and buy as many copies as possible and give it to your friends. This is very important. That will give you a very firm foundation in understanding the world itself, understanding your own purpose as a human being, and understanding the very existence of God and the existence of the universe. I believe that you will enjoy it. God bless you as you do this.
Links are in the description.